Hello, I'm Charles Fletcher. Welcome to the Herald and Times. We have a special report now, a background look at the murder case of Moira Jones. I'm joined in the studio from the Herald by Alison Campsey. Alison, you've been covering this terrible case over these many weeks and months. What has the atmosphere been like in court?
The atmosphere on a day-to-day basis has been very, very subdued. The details of what happened to Moira Jones have been exceptionally harrowing, and they have been aired in court while the family and friends of the victim have been there.
Let's have a little background. Where did this all begin, and if you paint a small picture of the actual event itself?
This all took place on May 28th last year, which was a kind of dark Scottish summer night. It had been raining. Moira Jones lived in the Queen's Park area of Glasgow, and she'd returned home, parked her car close to her flat. As she was locking up her car, she was approached by Archer, who then attacked Moira Jones and marched her into Queen's Park, which was a few feet away, and then subjected her to, over the course of perhaps even up to 3 hours, to a brutal and degrading attack, which would appear to have begun with a rape, ended with a serious beating. We understand she was stamped on, and she eventually died of head and neck injuries. In total, she had 65 wounds on her body.
Now, the judge in court said that the evidence was overwhelmingly against Harcher.
Yeah.
That to be the case, yes?
Yes, absolutely. Harcher, as I say, was totally drunk, completely drunk, as his flatmate would have described him the night that he went out in the Queen's Park area. He left an incredible trail of evidence behind him. He was caught, obviously, on the CCTV footage, but shortly after pulling Moira into the park, he dropped a cigarette. That cigarette had DNA evidence which matched Harcher's profile on it. Further into the park, there was buttons from Moira Jones's blouse found under a bush, which would suggest that that was where her blouse had been ripped off.
So completely careless in everything he was doing, thoughtless.
Absolutely. This was a very reckless, aggressive, frustrated man who went out that night, perhaps not with the intention to kill, but definitely with the intention to overpower something or someone. When the forensic scientists examined Moira Jones the day after the attack, one of them said in court that she'd never seen clothes so badly damaged on a victim. This was a very kind of rough attack on this woman. There was large amounts of semen, of Harcher's semen, found on her body, and there was also blood of Moira Jones found on his jacket. And
quite substantial, as I believe.
Absolutely. Forensic scientists said that the way the blood had fallen on the jacket would suggest that the blood had come from a punch that Harcher had delivered on his victim, and the victim's blood sprayed back on him. Now, Harcher was found with this jacket in Slovakia more than 2 weeks after the death of Moira Jones. He had made no attempt to clean his jacket, and it carried the evidence that was later to send him to jail for life.
So do you think that he thought he would get away with this?
I could offer little insight into the mindset of Harcher, but he constantly seemed to be in denial of what he had done. He'd obviously planned to leave Glasgow after the attack, but when the authorities caught up with him in Slovakia, I understand he was casually playing a game of poker with his friends at his grandmother's house.
As if nothing had happened.
As if nothing had happened. And when authorities did catch up with him, Harcher was very compliant. He said, "I'm innocent, I'm happy to come back to Scotland. I will help you with all your inquiries." He obviously went on to plead not guilty to these terrible crimes, despite the vast evidence against him, which also included Moira Jones's camera, which was found in his rucksack in his grandmother's house in Slovakia, and also the phone of Moira Jones, the back of which had been recovered in the park. The rest of the phone was in Merrick Harcher's pocket.
Now, in court, you've told me that he seemed to be quite calm throughout all of this, but what about the impact this has had on Moira's family and indeed Glasgow itself?
Moira Jones's mother delivered perhaps one of the most heartbreaking kind of statements, impact statements I've ever heard. It's a very raw, genuine reflection of how a family has been ripped apart by this throughout the case, and indeed before it got to trial. The Jones family have always stressed what a loving, caring unit that they all belong to, and how there was so much love for Moira and how much people did love her. Lots of good things have been said about her. She was fun, she had a good sense of humour, she was warm, she loved speaking to people, she could speak to people from all backgrounds, of all intellects, and people loved her just because she had such great vitality. And it's hard to imagine that if someone like that if someone like that is removed from your life, how difficult it would be to live without them. But if someone is taken from your life in such a kind of degrading and brutal way, how then that family unit kind of reforms is hard to imagine. And it's clear from the statements made today by B, Moira's mother, just how difficult it is for them to carry on.
How does it impact on you as a journalist to be covering a court case like this?
I actually found the details of the case really quite harrowing. You sort of learn to operate amongst the most difficult of circumstances, but I know I'm not the only reporter who found some of the details quite difficult to take. This was a young woman going around her business in Glasgow, like lots of young women do. They're kind of going from A to B, driving, parking up cars, trying to get home, meeting friends for drinks. And this was a real clear, awful example of how one person can cross your path and things will just change forever. So it was quite a difficult case to cover. But when you see the courage of the family, her boyfriend, her brother, you know that it's them who's really suffering the most, and what you feel just doesn't come into it. But I think the fact that the family were so connected to the case and to the investigation really made it feel real for a lot of people.
Alison Campsey, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
here
you.
on the Herald and Times Online, and we'll have more in the Herald newspaper. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.